What might be interesting to you may not be interested to the masses. You need to go out and create recognition for it, create exposure, and have a sales function. For a lot of small businesses, we can't wear all the hats. Have health checks with your customers. Have conversations with your customers. It's so interesting to see what their perception of your value is or where you bring value.
How can you help us, though, continue to help you? First, please subscribe to the channel. Like us. If you listen to the audio version, leave us a 5-star review wherever you can. If you see our posts, please share those posts, share the content, and link back to our law firm website, which helps us to continue our SEO marketing and grow our firm and help small business owners. All right, welcome to another episode of the show. If you are watching us perhaps on YouTube, maybe for the first time, or maybe you've been watching us for a long time, please subscribe to the show. It allows us to connect with more people, more eyeballs on the show. We get more following, bring more resources, connect with good guys like Damon, who we're going to talk to in a minute. So do that. If you're driving in your car, maybe you're walking through the park and you're listening to a podcast, leave us a 5-star review whenever you can. And then remember, go back to YouTube and subscribe to the show, because we're transitioning over to more of a video platform than an audio platform. So enough with that. We're going to get on with the show. Little quick disclaimer. Remember that the information we share in these episodes is for entertainment purposes only. It's not a guarantee of any kind of success. It's certainly not legal advice or any other advice of any kind. You should always seek advice from local licensed professionals when making any decisions. So I welcome to the show. We're going to talk about our names in a minute, but Damon Lembi. He is a 2-time best-selling author, the host of the Learn It All podcast. Love having podcast hosts on the show. And CEO of Learn It, a live learning platform that has upskilled over 2 million people. We spoke a couple of months ago, Damon, so maybe it's more than 2 million now. So I appreciate you coming on the show.
Hey, Mitch, it's an honor to be here. Thanks for having me.
Honor may be a big word, but I do appreciate it. So maybe we go back and start with your background, training, grow up, schooling, that kind of stuff, and how you got into business. I think there's a sports background too, right?
Yes. So
okay.
I was Damon Lembi. I was born and raised in the San Francisco Bay Area.
Okay.
Growing up, it was all about sports for me. Baseball, basketball, and football. I was lucky all my buddies were into it. My buddies' dads were our coaches, all of that. By the time I was a sophomore in high school, I realized that if I was going to play college or professional sports, baseball was my ticket. And so I went all in on baseball, and it worked pretty well for me. I was a high school All-American, and dating myself here, but in the 1990 draft out of high school, I got drafted by the Atlanta Braves, pretty high up.
Okay.
And I had my first big decision to make. Do I go to college? I had a full ride to Pepperdine University, or do I go play in the minor leagues? And for anybody who's a baseball fan, I would have been on Chipper Jones' team in Pulaski, West Virginia.
Yeah, I remember Chipper Jones.
Yeah, Chipper, he's awesome. And my parents were awesome. They're like, hey, this is your life. This is your decision. We'll back you up in whatever direction you want to go. And I went the college route. And it was one of my first real good leadership lessons, because my coach, who's a Hall of Famer, Andy Lopez at Pepperdine, he said a moonshot goal. He's like, we're going to win the College World Series within 2 years. And Pepperdine, Mitch, is like 2,000 people, so it was tough to compete with the LSUs, Arizona States, but he was set on this goal. And so I followed his vision. I went to Pepperdine, kind of suffered.
You still wanted to play baseball, but you decided I'm going to forgo the minor leagues, but 100%. Professional baseball for a while. And you went to Pepperdine and played there.
I mean, I had a full scholarship, so if I didn't play baseball, they'd probably send me off to the beach.
Yeah, right. Of course, you'd be paying for it, right?
You got to be paying for it, and so that's why I got my 3-year-old son in the backyard hitting wiffle balls, because I don't want to pay 125.
I got 3.
Oh, you got 3?
I got 1 out. 1 just graduated last week. My 3rd one just finished her freshman year at Arizona, out towards U
of A,
end of the country.
Wow,
U of A, yeah,
awesome. Yeah, I was a Sun Devil. I got 2 kids. We're probably the same age. Mine are 7 and 3. So I got a while.
There you go. Yeah, you're a little bit behind me. I graduated 85, so when you graduate 90, so I'm a little bit ahead of you.
Yeah, a little bit ahead of me.
But Arizona has a good baseball program too, right? The guys out west, a lot of baseball.
Arizona is a great baseball program. So is Arizona State.
Yeah.
At Pepperdine, though, I kind of got imposter syndrome. I didn't, I just kind of felt like, am I even good enough to be here and everything? And I really struggled. I got hurt, but I ended up leaving. sure enough, they won the World Series that year.
You were gone.
I was gone, and that probably helped them win the World Series, but I don't know. But they won. I mean, that was the moonshot goal, and they did it. They won the World Series. I bounced around for a year at a JC. I ended up at Arizona State.
Sun Devils.
Sun Devils. A lot of my friends said, don't go to the Sun Devils. There can be 17 guys trying out for first base. Go to a small school, get your degree, move on.
Real competitive. Yeah.
But I was like, screw it. This is my last shot. So I went for it. I worked really, really hard. My wife likes to say my glory days is I hit a home run that year in the College World Series.
So you went to the World Series.
I went to the World Series. We ended up losing to Oklahoma. Pretty interesting story.
Yeah.
And ready to get drafted again. This would have been my third time. I got drafted by the Yankees too, out of junior college.
Yeah.
Ready to move on. Didn't get drafted. And I'm 22 years old. And I'm like, what am I supposed to do? Baseball was my identity. Now it's over with. And so I had to figure out what to do with my life from there.
Wait, Damon, you said you were drafted 3 times. So when was the second time? Oh, twice.
Yeah.
Okay. So you were drafted by the Yankees or no?
Yes. So when I went, because they don't have,
Columbus, right? Is that where their farm team is?
I don't even know where they would have sent me. But back in the old days, they didn't have what they have today, the transfer portal and NIL and everything. So I had to go to a junior college to be able to go to another 4-year school. And for all you parents out there who have kids, I don't think, well, if you're a parent, you have kids. I don't think that there's anything wrong with going to a junior college, getting your AA, and then moving on to a 4-year school. And so that's what I did. But when I was at junior college, that's when I got drafted by the Yankees. Get to Arizona State. I'm like, third time's a charm. I had a great year. Then I just didn't get drafted. My baseball career ended.
Got it. But you could have gone you got your associate's degree at the junior college. You could have gone to the pros and said, screw Arizona State, right?
Yeah. And the reason why I didn't, I got drafted really low by the Yankees and also as a catcher. And so, Mitch, the higher up you get drafted, the more money they invest in you, the more opportunity they'll give you to do well. So if I was a late round draft choice, didn't get much money, and I had a bad rookie ball season, they'd probably cut me. And I figured I had more in me than just that. And so going to Arizona State, again on a scholarship, and working hard there really kind of set me up for what I'm doing now, really.
So what was your major in? You had to have a major, right? So at ASU.
Yeah, baseball.
Baseball was your major?
I mean, if you looked at my grades, yes. If you looked at my grades, yes, but my major was communications.
Okay, so marketing, whatever, communication, all that kind of stuff. Okay,
exactly.
So you got, obviously you didn't get hurt from a career-ending thing, but you didn't get drafted, and then it was over, and you're like, well, I guess my son will play baseball, but in the meantime, I got to do something with my life, right?
Right.
Okay, and what was that?
Yeah, and I didn't have a son at the time, just for the record.
That helps,
I
mean,
exactly. I didn't have a son at the time at 21, 22. So I was fortunate. I come from a family who had a really super successful real estate business and apartment buildings and a hotel chain and shopping centers and all this big time stuff, and even a Chinese restaurant. That's kind of random.
Yeah, that is random.
But I really struggled with self-confidence. I'm like, I don't know if any of the skills that I learned playing baseball will be transferable into the business world. And at the time, my dad was, he did what a lot of entrepreneurs do. He wanted to digitize his portfolio. This was the 90s.
Right.
And for real estate, he went and took a computer class. Computers were new. And he said, there's got to be a better way to do computer training than sitting in this sterile environment for 8 hours. So he called up the old CFO from our savings and loan, Continental Savings of America, and he said, there's got to be a better way to do this. That's where the idea of Learn It came up. And I started there June 5th, 1995. And that date is in my head because our 30th anniversary is coming up. Probably past this episode. Right. And this year.
Right, past this episode, because this will be in the fall. Right?
Yeah, past this episode. And I started off as a receptionist there in June of 95. Fast forward 30 years. I've been the CEO there for 25 years. And I went from not being much of a student at Arizona State to dedicating my whole professional career around learning, and really dove into learning. I wrote a book called The Learn It All Leader, have a podcast called The Learn It All Podcast. And so I really got into learning.
We're talking adult learning.
Adult learning.
Post-secondary adult learning. So you're really like second generation entrepreneur, business owner.
Yeah. I mean, I'd say so. I mean, look, my dad never worked at Learn It. He just never did. He came up with the idea, and I started there as a receptionist, and he likes to, unfortunately he passed away, and he likes to give me all the credit for, being an entrepreneur and taking Learn It to what it was. But the truth of the matter, it is his idea. I started off as a receptionist, and I worked my way up.
So who was running the company then?
This guy who is a CFO of our old savings and loan. And what happened with him was, I mean, when I got there, I said, man, people's work ethic isn't the same as it was in sports. People are showing up late. They don't have the drive, this kind of stuff. And so I said, I just want to make sure that my family's investment is taken care of. And I'm going to just work really hard and do whatever I could. And that's what I did for about 4 years. And when this gentleman named John wasn't working out, him and my father had a friendly parting, and they were going out and they were looking for a new CEO. I presented to the board, and I said, look, I've taught classes. I've closed our biggest sales opportunities. Give me a shot. And they said, yeah, let's do it. And Mitch, that was, for those of us old enough to remember, in San Francisco, to be right in the heart of the .com boom. Yeah. So I'm a 26-year-old CEO, and I'm like, man, I must just be the smartest person in the world. This is easy to run a business, and then you learn otherwise.
Yeah. Well, because you said you started in '95, right? So the internet. I think I first learned about the internet in like '92. I was on some youth mission in Israel. Okay. There were kids from Europe, the United States, and Israel. I tell the story all the time, and they were talking about this thing called the internet. And I said, look, I'm from the United States. If we haven't heard about it, it's not a real thing. And I get back, and there's all these AOL discs. Remember those?
Yeah, of course.
On everybody's stoop in New York, New Jersey, and it all hit from there. So then you're 3 years into, an internet change that was just kind of young. So then when you took over CEO, you're already in the 2000s when you were the CEO at that point?
Exactly. Now, one of the stories I like to talk about is, this is probably in 95, 96. But we had a class called Necessary Net, where for $25 you get a specialty sandwich, a cookie, and an AOL disk. Okay. And for most people, it was the first time they ever got on the internet. And you remember that?
Never done it before. Yeah, you got to dial in.
And it'd be in a classroom with like 20 people, and people were like, "Oh my gosh, this is absolutely crazy." And so that was like, I just remember that day where these people seeing this for the first time. But yeah, I took over as CEO probably right around early 2000.
I'd love to take like one of your young kids or even my kids, right? And you put them down in front of a computer with an AOL disk, and they would be like, what kind of crap is this?
Exactly.
Like, this is terrible. And we thought it was the coolest thing we had ever seen. I remember I met a guy once who did a lot of that. He would speak about technology, and he'd go around, especially to larger, business groups, about what you do and what the internet is. And he told a story where his young daughter was like making fun of him, said, Dad, why do you do this for a living? It's like if you got up on stage and told people what a refrigerator was. Yeah. Like to her, it made no sense. Like that was her whole world. And, these kids don't know what cassette tapes are or even CDs anymore. And it's all on demand, available. You can listen to this podcast, just download it. You know what I mean?
It's a different world.
Their whole perspective. Yeah. But I want to go back to something you mentioned about when you came from sports, the lack of drive that you saw in the average person, which I think is true. When I went through college, I went to Cornell, and it was very hard for me. I wasn't the best student, but I got in for certain reasons, and it was like being on fire for 4 years. And then I went to law school. Law school didn't seem so hard because Cornell was hard. You get out in the real world and you start thinking. I think I see a lot of athletes that are, successful post, whatever it is that they do, because they're A-types, they're driven, they're used to being in team sports, working hard to get results. So the leadership and the following and the follow through becomes more not innate, but ingrained in who they are, and I think a lot of people, we get a lot of laziness that comes out of, not everybody's got to be A-type, right? Not everybody's got to be driven and working 60 hours a week. As a matter of fact, I don't think that even correlates with success. Working 80, 90 hours a week, you can be very successful and not burn yourself out to the point where you can't function anymore when you're 35 or 40 because you've been working so freaking hard. But I just find that it's, especially the younger generations, just not there. It's not, just a different world.
I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, going back to what you said about athletes in the workforce, I'm a big fan of hiring athletes, and
Sure.
I like to call it the athletic education. The skills that you pick up playing sports, especially team sports, are discipline, collaboration, learning agility, which I think is so important these days, and it will be in this rapid change of pace we have with AI. And in sports, you're also always receiving feedback. You're always getting feedback. Go up to the plate, you strike out, coach gives you some feedback. You have to use your learning agility. You get it back up to the plate. It's learning agility. It's perseverance. There's so many great skills that can transfer over to your work career. And I have to give most of the credit for my success. Plenty of failures, but my success due to what I learned playing sports.
So, and I do want to get into the learning side of things a little bit later in the show, because I think it's so important that people continue to do that. I'm curious as to the kind of things that you're teaching and the things you see. But if we go a little bit back to your career, right? So you come into the business after sports. Communications is a loose business major, right? It's about communicating with people and PR, maybe all kinds of different stuff, right? Especially nowadays. I don't know if it's different. Maybe it's more marketing. What kind of challenges did you face, right, coming into the business? I mean, you really worked your way up, right, from the ground. You had no business training unless you learned it on the job, I guess, right?
Well, I would say, and nobody feels sorry for this, I came in, I think, with a lucky spoon curse. I talk about that in my book.
Right. Well, because it was your dad's company.
And I came from a very well-known family in San Francisco, Frank Lembi, Walter Lembi. And so here I am. And they're like, okay, well, everybody expects, well, maybe they'll just hit their son up in like a senior executive role. I didn't want that. So that was one challenge, is to have to prove my worth. And also I wanted to, look, my parents were great. My mom for sure. And my dad, I wanted to contribute and give back. And I had to overcome that, again, that type of imposter syndrome or maybe even a little self-doubt. But I was able to do it much easier at work because how I did it in baseball, which is working hard and just going through it. And that's where learning really came in, is that every role that I got into, I really immersed myself in the role. So when I started teaching classes, I just studied my butt off, right? And I practiced, and I did practice classes. When I got into sales, I read a bunch of sales books, and I got mentors, and I did sales training. And then when I moved into the CEO role, I've been like this the rest of my career. I felt like all these people at the time, it was like 15, 20 people. Now we have, 60, 70 employees. I feel like these people depend on me quite a bit. So it's my responsibility as a leader to always stay ahead of the curve, especially when it comes to learning. So always dove into learning, being curious, trying to figure out how to get better, making mistakes, learning from those mistakes, and making different mistakes is essentially how I overcome some of the barriers I dealt with.
What aspects of running the business did you find most challenging? So maybe the leadership stuff was a little bit easier for you because you're used to team sports, things like that. But what was the most challenging stuff?
I think one of the most challenging things that it probably took me 15 years to really 20 years to learn how to do was delegate. In a lot of,
you had to do it all yourself.
I always, because also my grandfather, he prided himself on working 80 hours a week and getting everything done. And if you work less than 80 hours a week, you're soft. These days, if you're working 80 hours a week, you're just probably stupid. And you're not leveraging AI. You're not leveraging your team. You're not delegating. So I think delegation was a very difficult thing to learn to do, because when you're an individual contributor, your success comes through yourself.
Right.
When you're a team leader, you are then getting your success through your team. And so you got to be able to trust and rely on them. That was a big one. The other one was early on when things were going really well, I was stubborn and I wanted to open up a lot more locations
to grow
and grow. And I looked at, Mitch, I looked at all my buddies who were paper millionaires with all these .com companies they work for.
Right. Yeah.
So I pushed my father and the board on it, and they're like, "Hey, bigger's not always better. You got this
scaling, right?
scaling.
Yeah,
My dad's like, look, you guys you're profitable. You have a good thing here. It's very difficult to keep the same type of culture and expand and scale."
very hard. Yeah,
I went out. We opened up 5 or 6 locations, and then the .com bust happened. 9/11 happened, and to be totally honest, if it wasn't for my family, for that first economic downturn, would have been out, would have been done.
yeah, right.
And my dad likes
You
to
had a
say,
safety net. A lot of people don't.
yeah, my dad likes to say, you got like the most expensive real world MBA I've ever seen.
Right.
But he always kept his faith in me and learn it, and just worked really hard to get our way out of that.
Yeah, no, it sounds like you grew up with very supportive parents, and they were able to do that, right, financially, and support what you're doing. But yeah, I think the difference, especially with small businesses, right? Leadership is about delegating and empowering the people that work for you, so you don't have to work 80 hours a week, and you get better results. And people, right? Because you can't do it yourself. I think when our parents and grandparents and stuff were working, it was a different world. Like it just things now are much more complex. A lot of people are involved in small businesses. Then it was like you were the shopkeeper or you're working for a big company.
Right.
It was very different. So, but I think that's a big problem where a lot of people, some of it is, like you said, insecurity, and they're just afraid to like let go. And some of it is they just haven't been taught the skills to go from dictator to facilitator and delegator, right? Because a dictator just tells people what to do and maybe does a lot of it himself. And a leader, somebody who delegates, gives it off to people and says, "Hey, I'll give you some guidance, but go and run with it and show me that you can do good things." And then it creates a much better culture, obviously, right? I mean, that's one of the problems with people miserable at work, and then they just leave for the wrong reasons. I mean, they leave to their financial detriment because they're just so miserable that they just said, I can't, deal with this anymore. That I find that to be a challenge. So it's interesting that as a person who is involved in team sports, that you found that to be difficult.
Absolutely. I found it to be difficult. And even today, whether it's at Learn It, where we do a lot of new manager training, or just the people I coach, quite honestly, Mitch, a lot of times people come to me and say, "Hey, I got opportunity to be a first-time manager," usually salespeople, and they're all super excited about it. And I typically ask them a couple questions, questions like, "Well, what interests you about leading other people? Have you ever coached anybody before? Why are you doing this?" And a lot of times, I always recommend that they don't do it, because leading takes a completely different skill set. Not
even close.
Right. And too many, you could say small business owners, because it happens to promoting people, or just larger organizations, they think that just promoting the high performer into a leadership role is the right way to go. A lot of times it's not, because you know what happens? You put them into this role, you don't give them any training, support, they become frustrated.
Think, well, Damon was our lead salesperson, so he could teach everybody how to do that. That's going to be easy.
Exactly.
We'll get 12 Damons out of him. Mm-hmm. It's not going to happen.
And what happens to most Damons is they're not empathetic. They don't understand, why can't others do it like me?
Right.
And you get frustrated, and then you even jump in and you do the work for them, and you become I call it being a hero instead of a hero maker. Coaches are hero makers. And so that's why I think it's really important for individuals to consider why they want to go into leadership if they get the opportunity to, but also for small business owners or whomever. You don't need to always promote people into leadership roles. Promote them in different ways, technical skills or whatever it is. But leadership's not for everybody, and it's totally fine if somebody doesn't move into a leadership role.
Well, I mean, it's the great paradox, right? That's why some of these very successful entrepreneurs can't make it as the CEO of their company, because they don't have those skills. They were really good at whatever it was, making their product, developing, selling. I know so many guys. I grew up in the life insurance industry. My dad was an insurance salesman, died a couple of years ago.
I'm sorry.
Since 1965, maybe a long time ago. He was going to become a shoe salesman. I don't know if you remember Kinney's shoes.
I do.
Right?
Yeah.
He went to buy insurance from my mom. My mom was pregnant with me, whatever. And he said to the guy, I'd like to learn more about your business. Became an insurance salesman, which is very independent in those days. And, he was always a very good salesman. He was empathetic. He could, but I met so many people that are such good salespeople, that got promoted to internal jobs in big companies, the companies that they were doing business with, and either were miserable or terrible at what they did.
Absolutely.
It was a joke. It was like, if you sell, don't teach. If you teach, don't sell.
Yeah. Those who can't do, teach.
Right. Which is not a bad thing. I know everybody makes it out like it's a bad thing.
You got to figure out. I think it's important to figure out. I mean, you got to figure out what your strengths are, and focus on your strengths. I'm a big believer in focusing on your strengths instead of trying to make your weaknesses better, and surround yourself with individuals who can, cover your weaknesses for you. Right. So if you have a great team, and if I'm a terrible writer, then you want to have somebody on your team who is a writer. And if somebody else is strong in sales, bring somebody else in to do the sales work.
Yeah, I think that's the term. I look for like a term of the episode. That's like the key point of this episode, right? Is that you should focus and develop your strengths. I think as we're grown up, right, we're told to focus on our weaknesses because because our strengths are fine. Like, work on your weaknesses, and that might just take away from everything that you're doing.
Absolutely. I mean,
right?
I had this guest on my show, Benjamin Benghazi, and he does neuroscience and everything like that too. But if you want to be great at something, figure out what your strengths are and organize towards that and go in that direction. It's very difficult to be successful in a work that you don't enjoy and that you're not good at. So you want to kind of combine all those together. And the same thing goes for employees. I've had a lot of employees who've come in to learn it, and they got the right values, right? I mean, they have integrity, they work hard, they collaborate with, our core values,
right? But
they're not a fit for that role. Like Joe Patty, this guy came in from New Jersey, and he went to our sales team, and he was everybody loved him. Joe is a great guy to have on our team, still here, and he was struggling in sales, but I sat down with him, got curious, and said, "What is it that you love to do?" And he said, I used to be a performer. I love computers. He's been probably our top computer training instructor, because we still do Excel classes and Copilot and everything, for the last like 7 or 8 years. So it's figuring out what your strengths are and putting them in that direction. Now, Mitch, if somebody's failing at their job, that doesn't mean just put them in a different position.
Right.
Some people, sometimes you do that because you feel bad that people, whatever, but if you have great people, get curious and figure out where they can be the best at.
Right. And listen, if they're not a fit for your company, you're not doing them any service either. Maybe you help them find another job. Maybe you connect them with somebody or whatever, because that's what, it's all about connections and finding your people and helping people along the way. It doesn't have to be within your company. I think that is the thing that people in a supportive environment, those things all go in the right direction. In a non-supportive environment where it's like, and I know some companies like this where it's, it's like get thrown them to the dragon's lair, and the way they treat employees, and, do or die. And especially in the big companies where they're doing like trading and things like that in the financial world and stuff like that, it's real cutthroat. But I just think that you have a good employee population, you support the employees, you create a good environment, you do all these good things, and it only benefits the company.
Maybe you're getting your calendaring from one software and you're invoicing from another. Evenoo is a platform that we use as one of our sponsors to run our entire business. And there's other features like auto payments and integrations with QuickBooks. Visit evenoo.com, EVONUE.com to learn more. There's also a link in the show notes. And be sure to tell them that the Accidental Entrepreneur referred you. This podcast is brought to you by our affiliate sponsor, iEmployee. iEmployee is a virtual assistant service that hires almost anyone for any role in your company right out of the Philippines. Most roles range from $7 to $9 an hour for highly skilled and experienced VAs. And whether you need an executive assistant, social media manager, video editor, customer service, sales, you name it, they have it. We use iEmployee for our VA services, from editing and promoting the podcast to all the PR and promotion of our law firm. iEmployee acts as a virtual field supervisor on the back end with live video monitoring and reports on a daily basis with screenshots of your VA's workday, and along with complete HR and payroll duties. No more paying for overpriced and underqualified workers. There's a link in the show notes to get a 1-week free trial, and I encourage you to take advantage of it.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that great leaders are people first leaders. They put they put their people first. They put their people first. I was speaking to this woman who worked with me for a long time, and for the last 8 years, she's been at a much larger organization, and she was super successful there. They brought in a new CEO, and the values changed. It went from taking care of the people first to putting the concerns of the shareholders first. Right. And they made some changes, and maybe they had to, who knows? But she ended up leaving because she's like, it's just not in line with my values anymore. But if you put your people first, they will then take care of your customers, and then you'll be doing well. Then your shareholders will be happy. I mean, so people first leadership, I think, is very, very important.
Yeah. I mean, look, without the people, I would say this, without the people, the company doesn't exist. It doesn't run itself, even though you have shareholders. So the shareholders are invested in the company. You don't take care of the people, shares aren't worth too much.
Even with AI.
We miss that. Even with AI is not going to replace people. It's going to shift things around, just like there was at the turn of the last century, right? Yep. When we went to machines and, people will never have jobs again. It's all BS. It's not going to happen.
Yep.
Even, and I don't want to I try to avoid politics, but even from political level, right? I am very fiscally conservative, socially liberal, fiscally conservative. But I do recognize that if we don't support the base of our economy, right? It just hurts all of us. And I have a lot of friends, or some of them listening to the show, who, we don't want to give them this and that. And I'm not all for like welfare, give out money. But you also got to realize that if the base isn't supported, the upper people aren't going to benefit either. It's the robber baron syndrome, right? Where there's such a disparity between the workers and the haves and the have-nots. Society starts to fall apart, just like the company falls apart if the workers in the company are so distraught working on the shop floor, right? Where you basically get a riot in the factory because they're being so poorly treated. I mean, it's a microcosm of an economy. And I think we're very short-sighted when it comes to that. And maybe it's just because we have bad leaders. We had good leaders, it'd be different. But
I also think
you and I want to go into politics.
Last place I'd want to go is into politics. I think it's
of course you want to emasculate yourself and your family. Forget it.
No, exactly. I think it's one of the toughest things you'd have to do. Your whole life is on display, and it's
absolutely
crazy. And last thing I'd say about that is, and your product's not going to sell itself. So no matter how wonderful your product is. And a lot of founders and entrepreneurs, because I work with fractional CROs, chief revenue officers, and they come to me for advice on how do I deal with this guy and or this woman. And I said, what's up? And they said, they've got this great product. They've raised $10 million or something.
Right.
And they don't know anything about sales. They don't care about sales, and they don't care about marketing because they just think it's going to sell themselves, which it's not going to do. You need to go out and create recognition for it, create exposure and have a sales function. And that goes for a lot of small businesses where the small business owner, you can't wear all the hats. I mean, you got to be careful with your hiring, but again, goes back to your strengths. Bring somebody in and realize that your product won't sell itself.
Yeah, I think that is, if there are 4 parts of a basic business plan, right? Your product or service, your people, right? Your personnel, because you can't do everything yourself. Your financials, right? With your pro formas, and the marketing. The marketing should be first. You should first figure out how in the world are we going to sell this thing, and how are we going to get the message out and get people to buy it? Because if we can't figure that piece out, all the rest of it are wasting time. You're wasting money on developing a product or service. You're hiring people that are going to lose their job, and the financials will take care of themselves if you do it right. And I think you're right. People want to build the company, they want to hire the people, they want to make it all pretty, put up the website, and they, the product, they're getting it going. Maybe it's a service, right? They're doing online video training, whatever. And they have no strategy to answer the question of how do we get coal into the engine?
Yeah.
Into the furnace, right?
And I don't even know. I mean, marketing, I think a little different is marketing research, market research. Yeah. I had this guy on who created BarkBox, which is like $1 billion company, for dog treats. But before he went out and did this elaborate thing, is he cooked, or he had somebody cook some at home, and he'd walk around dog parks, and he'd say he had his iPhone. And he'd just say, hey, this is $10. And he just kept track on how many people would actually buy it. Minimal viable product, right? Just to see if there's any interest in it. Because what might be interesting to you may not be interested to the masses or even to your
Right.
niche market. So start
Wouldn't you
small.
say 9 times out of 10 you're wrong?
Yeah.
Most of the time you're wrong. But what you think's great, other people don't think so great.
And the other thing I want to double tap on that, if you say it, is even as a business that's been around a really long time, like Learn It, is have health checks with your customers, have conversations with your customers, because it's so interesting to see what their perception of your value is or where you bring value. And we just went through that. I hired this great organization called Blue Dot, where they interviewed some of our top customers, and where we thought we were bringing them value was actually different. And so it's good to go back and connect on that, because then you can tweak your value proposition. Your go-to-market strategy can change. And so it's just always ever evolving. And it comes back to my whole thing around learning and curiosity, is just not have that know-it-all mindset, Mitch, where you think that you have it all figured out, because you don't.
Well, that's the death knell, right? I mean, curiosity is a great word.
Yep.
The most successful people I've had on this show never stop asking their customers why they buy, what they're interested in, why they don't buy this anymore, what do they want for the future, constantly, because in their mind, it's part curiosity and part maybe, worrying. They're worried about that they're wrong.
They should be.
They always should be. Yeah. Always double checking what the customer wants, what the marketplace looks like, because then you can adjust your marketing and your sales to that response. If you think, oh, I know what everybody wants, we're going to make this and sell this, and then you're like, well, why isn't it selling? But because you're wrong.
Yeah, I think I always give recommendations that you should evaluate your value prop twice a year. At least twice a year, and just make sure that it's still aligned with your customer base. And then, even more importantly, especially in the age of AI, what are the opportunities to be disrupted for what you're doing? And sometimes, unfortunately, it means cannibalizing your own current business and having to go pivot and do a different direction.
Sometimes
to stay ahead, which is difficult. I mean, obviously, look what happened to places like Blockbuster, who didn't do that. That's an example. Everybody uses that, but
people aren't going to be buying things online through the mail. What are you talking about? They want to come to a store and see a video. Missed that one.
Yep.
That's a good one. Good example. Yeah. But a lot of people get caught because they're so committed, right, to the way they do business, thinking that it's the best, right? People will always come to a store because we're human beings. We want to buy a video, rent a video, we'll bring it back, we put it in our machines, but they didn't see what was coming, and that was different delivery systems, different technology. People want, and forget about the fact that the pandemic and everything just blew up internet marketing and buying and so forth. They just didn't see it. And maybe it was because they were so stuck on their business model and the way they did business, and it was too late. I heard stories that they used to send in spies to some of the Netflix centers where they would send out these DVDs to figure out what the heck they were doing with these algorithms and finding out what people's likes and wants and dislikes. Yeah.
Interesting. No, I mean,
well, they didn't work.
You got to always be aware of what your potential blind spots could be. And it's not an easy thing to do.
No, it's a hard thing to do, like you said, and it's hard to make those changes and to admit the fact that maybe you're wrong. And
well, that part shouldn't be that hard. I mean,
it shouldn't be.
It shouldn't be that hard. I mean, I talk a lot about in my book, The Learn It All Leader, like what are the key traits people need? And humility is really number one. You just said it a second ago. It's okay to admit you don't have the answers. Just, hey, I don't know the answer to this.
It's a relief.
It's a relief.
That's a lot of pressure.
And you don't need to go at this alone. One of my favorite books I read recently is Keith Ferrazzi's Never Lead Alone. And it's all about elevating the rest of your team and people around you to realize, again, that you don't have to have all the answers and figure out everything yourself. But if you have a great team or people around you who are taking accountability and they're getting work done, that's the best way to go about it.
And you want them to feel like they're the ones coming up with the ideas, and you're not,
especially as a small business owner, you do.
Yeah. People put too much pressure on themselves to feel that they got to have the answers. And, if you're the entrepreneur and you're started the business, look, I understand you get started, you got to sweep the floors, you got to pay the bills, then you get in like one secretary, assistant, whatever, you start to delegate, but you still feel like, oh my God, I got to do this, right? Everybody's looking at me and I'm the guy and I got to, but they're not really looking at you that way. That's in your mind.
It is. And I work with a lot of entrepreneurs, just more as a mentor. And I just ask them, what's important for you? Is it to drive great results, or is it to have a big ego and make it sound like you're the one getting it all done? For me personally, I want my team to get all the credit.
Right.
All the credit. Even if it's an idea I come up with, I want to make
cares?
it so that they come up with it.
Right.
Because if you do that, they're always going to be bubbling up with ideas.
Right.
And that's what I think makes a business that thrives and also scales. If you have people who are always looking at it like from an ownership mindset when they can,
right,
and that you're open to
they're
listening.
Entrepreneurs, is that the word?
What's that?
They're like entrepreneurs, meaning they treat the business like their own, and they're more creative. You know what I always say to people if I'm talking to somebody and they're struggling, whatever, if you can imagine like all the things going right, like your employees are buying in, everybody's thinking of ideas, they're all doing, people are in the right place. What kind of results, like what does your world look like? And if that looks really good, and it always does, of course, then that's what should be done. If you go the other direction, you're controlling everything, you're making all the decisions, the employees just follow you,
taking all the credit.
They're not creative. How does that world look like? Well, it always looks crappy. So it's obvious what the choices should be, but people still don't do it.
Mitch, it reminds me of 1 year, doesn't matter who the coach is. I had a coach who, when things went well, he took all the credit. Yeah. It was the lineup decisions. It was the changes during the game, pitching changes. But when things went bad, guess what? He blamed everybody else. He would say, our cleanup hitter struck out. No wonder why we lost. And a lot of times I was the cleanup hitter. So I thought to myself, how does that make me feel? And if I ever lead a team, your responsibility as a leader. I mean, of course you want people who have accountability and aren't victim mentality. I mean,
but they want to be empowered too.
But they want to be empowered. And if things go well, give them credit. If things don't go well, get out in front and take ownership of it. Support your team. Make sure that they know that you have their back. Very important.
Yeah. And your life is better because of that. I think you have a better quality of life. You feel better. You're making people feel good. I don't know. If you're a Scrooge, I guess it doesn't matter. They don't care about people.
I think one thing also that you said that I've always, as Learn It comes up on our 30-year anniversary, and what I've reflected back on a lot, one of the things that I'm feel the best about is have had the opportunities to make people understand the greatness inside of them. Because a lot of times people don't even understand what they're capable of achieving.
Yeah.
And by putting trust in them and saying, like this woman, Laurel, who runs a great student debt business, just being part of her journey and saying, hey, Laurel, you have it in you to be a tremendous entrepreneur yourself.
Right.
And people are like, oh, wow, you really think so?
Nobody said that to them before.
Yeah. Nobody said it to them before. And a lot of high performers don't even realize it because they're so, they want everything to be perfect all the time. They get so down on themselves. But I think whether you're a parent, whether you're a coach, whether you're a business leader, it's your responsibility to help people see the greatness inside of them that maybe, and the things they can achieve that maybe they can't even see on their own.
Yeah. I think parenting is a good analogy, right? Your job as a parent is not to be right all the time. It's to equip your children to make it in the world without you.
Yeah, well, Mitch,
pass that along.
I agree, but for somebody who's got a 3-year-old and a 7-year-old, and I'm responsible for bedtime duty, I'm right in that situation. I
used to be bedtime duty too.
Yeah. I'm right in that situation. I'm like, Wally, go to bed, and he's like, no, Daddy, I want to, no. In that situation, right? But everything else.
That's a little different, right? Sometimes, Daddy, that's not. Well, what does that matter? I'm right and you're wrong. I go, well, I'm the dad, and you're 3. And that's the way it's gonna, you don't need to argue with every kid. But I still get it now. They're older and they try and convince me of things. Sometimes you just got to say, okay, well, that's the way it's gonna be. You do whatever you want, but I'm not doing. I'm gonna do it this way. Life experience does count, right? If your kid's 16 and you're 46, the only thing you have in common with your 16-year-old is that when you were 16, you thought you knew everything also. Right?
Absolutely. But again, tying it all back to business, though. I talk a lot about the difference between being a learn-it-all and a know-it-all. Know-it-all has all the answers. They have it all figured out. They don't want to hear what anybody has to say. I just think that that's a recipe for disaster. And
totally
it's silly to go in that direction. A learn-it-all is somebody who's like, hey, you know what? I don't have all the answers. I'm going to figure out how to make it happen. I'm going to do things. I'm going to say what I do and do what I say. I'm going to back up my team, and I'm always willing to learn. I like to say, my little saying is, great leaders aren't born or made. They're always in the making, because you have to be. I mean, you have to continuously learn to get better and grow.
Yeah, no, that's why I love the world of podcasting, because I'm always listening to something, whether it's history or business or sometimes politics or whatever. But I just find it fascinating about the things that are out there and the stories and the information and the way businesses have been grown and mistakes people made along the way and how they learned and how they built this type of thing. The Guy Raz podcast is kind of like, I look at this as like an amateur version of that.
That's
I like to
okay.
tell people
I want to just point out for your listeners, and I don't know how long you've been doing this. I've been doing this about a year and a half, but
it's
it's
been
been,
6 years on you.
oh, 6 years.
6 years I've been doing it.
I just want to say it's been one of the greatest experiences of my life for several reasons. It's made me a better listener, a better communicator. I 10x my network. And it's like for some people who like to learn and grow, bringing on different guests and being guests on shows, I mean, you just learn so much.
Yeah.
And all of us have a point of view or something to say. So if you've ever considered wanting to start a podcast, you should do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Everybody's got a podcast now. And I'll take you out 5 years from now. You'll see how you feel then. I've been used to talking to people and getting online, hearing my voice and, listening very well and being curious. Curious is a good word for today. Because I mean, you meet from very interesting people. And then, when we got online through the pandemic, because I didn't know what Zoom was, right? I had no idea. People used to come to my office and sit at the end of this desk with another mic, and we would do audio podcasts, local people. And I have a lot of local friends and networks and so forth, but I've been able to, I connected with you. You're out in California. I've talked to people in Australia and Singapore and all over Europe and everything like that. And it is very, very rewarding to meet people who have, struggled and succeeded and have good advice for people and be able to hopefully help people along the way. But that kind of leads us into what you do, right? Mm-hmm. I'm always fascinated by lifelong learning and the learning that you bring to people. So tell us about Learn It and, what are the things that you bring to people that they can learn? It can't just be computer courses. So
no, especially not in this day and age.
Right, exactly.
Learn It is a live learning platform.
Okay.
We're a B2B organization, and customers turn to us when they're looking to build out a culture of learning, or maybe they're struggling with retention. One of the top things that people say on their pulse scores is that, hey, we don't have enough learning opportunities, personal growth. And we talked about this a little bit. Customers also turn to us when they're promoting people from individual contributors to new managers, and we help give them the skills that they need to be better leaders, whether it's how to have difficult conversations, how to give and receive feedback, how to communicate. And then we still do some of the Excel, PowerPoint stuff as well.
But it's all B2B. So you're setting up a platform for the company,
but it's live,
to offer to its employees that they get to log in and do whatever they're doing.
Yes, right? but it's live training. It's basically it's
scheduled.
It's an instructor-led training. So it's basically Zoom. You could do it two ways. And for your listeners, you could ping me on LinkedIn. I'll give you a free $250 class on like whatever you want, emotional intelligence or Excel.
We'll put that in the show notes. Okay.
Please do. I the only thing I ask is that if you enroll, sign up. The other people in the class are taking 200. I mean, if you enroll, sign up. If you enroll, show up.
Right.
And
show up. That makes more sense.
Send me a note on what you thought, because we're always looking to get better. But we do public classes where anybody can join. You can get into a class, and it could be people from 15 different industries or unemployed people looking for career changers, or organizations of all sizes will design programs where it's just their employees only, and we can tailor the classes to help them both solve challenges that they have or help them achieve goals. And before we started, you talked about upskilling. To me, upskilling is just like, okay, here's a set of skills you have, and here's some skills that you need for the future, whether it's how to use AI or how to be a better communicator or a leader. That's really what upskilling is.
That makes sense. So are there any industries that you work in better than others? I mean, is it more like you're working in manufacturing, or you're working in engineering, or you're working in
it's a great question. I mean, I think overall we're industry agnostic, but we do a lot of work with life sciences and healthcare.
Okay.
A lot of times it depends on organizations that are going through growth, right? Where they're struggling with communication and scaling, and they're frustrated internally with communication growth and hitting timelines and projects. We also do a lot of work with retail and some with manufacturing. Typically for us, our core customer is 200 to 1,000 employees, that kind of size, because they don't have their full L&D team, learning and development
But they're big
team.
enough that they need to offer those kind of skills to their.
Yeah, I mean, we work. One of my favorite clients is Yosemite Conservatory, a nonprofit where they have 26 employees, but they have leadership that really believes in personal growth, and they look at it as a way to keep great employees on their job postings when they hire. One of the benefits of working for Yosemite is to take learning and development courses at Learn It. So that's a great way for organizations who are trying to attract, hire, and retain great talent.
But are the courses more? They're not like, obviously in life sciences, you're not teaching them scientific things.
No.
So
what we're teaching them a lot of times?
Yeah, what are you teaching them? Yeah.
I mean, this is very common. You get these scientists who are incredibly sharp, and they get very frustrated that the everyday people that they need to speak with, guys like me, are dumb, and so we help them learn how to communicate better and articulate, because a lot of these scientists have to be in leadership roles. So we're helping them, like, you have to be able to communicate, because as great as you are and what you're discovering, it's not going to go anywhere if nobody else understands what you're saying, or if you're getting frustrated and nobody wants to work with you.
Right. Yeah, no, makes sense.
So that's a big one. I mean,
soft skills. Yeah.
Soft skills. I hate that term, because
for a scientist, I mean,
but I don't think that those are, we call them human skills, just because
human skills is a better word.
They're so important. And with AI coming on board, critical thinking, problem solving, communicating with each other, those, I think, people have always asked me, what are the most important skills? I would say those skills, and also learning agility, the ability to learn, unlearn, relearn. I think that those are key for the future.
Yeah, no, you're right. Human skills. So it's all the touchy feely, interactive type of stuff that, is not quantitative and is not empirical, and is not necessarily intuitive to especially people that are scientists.
But Mitch, don't tell my curriculum team that they're touchy feely and soft. they're not gonna like that. But I get what you're saying, and it's true. Emotional intelligence. Do you have self-awareness? Those types of skills can be taught. A lot of people think that they can't be taught, but they can be taught if somebody's open to learning and growing.
Do you remember any situations where you got involved, you landed a client, and it just went all wrong? Like,
yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Typically that, and if that happened all the time, we wouldn't be in business.
No, obviously.
Anymore.
I'm just, that's why I asked the question.
But a lot of times, I think, especially as you become, I think early on, I think most of your clients are small business, right? Is that your word?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I think early on, especially in small business, you want to take any client you could work with. Anybody who will give you money, you want to work with them.
Yeah.
But as you get more successful and you start realizing that you have to kind of vet who you work with, because it's got to be more of a partnership than a vendor relationship if you want things to go well. And so, to answer your question, there have been times where people organizations would spend money with us, and they would look at training to begin with as a checkbox. Like, we're only spending $10,000 with you because, people say they need it, they want it, but I don't understand why they don't have these skills. That's what I've heard leadership people.
Like, leadership doesn't see its value.
They don't see the value in it. They're just like, we're just checking the box, getting these people to, be quiet and move on. And then what makes it even worse is that they're not helping us help their own people. They won't meet with us. They won't communicate with us. They won't give us access to their marketing team to promote the training.
Right. They're kind of standing in your way.
They're not allowing people to attend classes.
Right.
And so those are examples where, to some point, you have to have a heart-to-heart conversation. And even, I don't want to take people's money if we're setting ourselves up for failure.
Right.
Or put my instructors and facilitators in a position to fail, because they're going to be in a room with a bunch of people, or virtually in a bunch of people, and they're unprepared because the leadership has no interest in this being successful.
Right. And then it reflects poorly on your company. And it's not good for you guys. And then people go away to another company. They go, I don't use Learn. It was a terrible experience we had.
And it makes
it's not your fault.
Well, it is our fault if we don't do something about it.
Yeah, right. That's true. But I mean, the reflection is because of their attitude or I don't know,
And
closed-mindedness. I don't know what the word is.
No, and there's enough business out there to go out and find customers.
Say no to people.
To say no, my thing I like to say, which is kind of funny, is send them to your competitor.
Yeah.
Say, go to ABC company. Go spend your money over there. Drop that lead balloon on them, and then go out and find customers who have the same kind of values that you have, and that are passionate about learning and developing. And I like to call it to create a learn it all or just a learning culture, which you have to have these days because of how fast everything is moving.
Right. Tremendously. You need, if all your employees were curious and learned and grew and
not afraid to make mistakes.
Yeah, they would just, think of what the world looks like. And I think that when you get a company like that, they're just, they just don't get it.
Yeah.
Like they miss the whole point.
Yep. But, I mean, it's old school thinking.
Yeah. It's like, acting for the shareholders, not for the employees. But I appreciate you coming on. Another great conversation. I love to talk about this stuff. So it's learnit.com is the website, right?
Yep.
If you want to learn about you, I know you're on LinkedIn. We'll put those links in the show notes. Any parting words? Any last few words?
Well, I guess my last few words are, I mentioned earlier, great leaders aren't born or made. We're all leaders. So just stay curious and keep learning. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. Get comfortable with failure. Try new things. Nothing happens sitting on your ass. Go out and do something.
Damon, thanks for coming on The Accidental Entrepreneur.
Thanks for having me, Mitch.
In addition to being a podcast host, I'm also a small business attorney, mostly providing legal services in New York and New Jersey. With over 3 decades of experience, we can handle most transactional issues. So if you're watching the show and you encounter some sort of legal issue, reach out to us and visit our website, beinhakerlaw.com. Thanks for tuning into the show and for continuing to support us.